Okay. This is a very special episode of the Podcast Engineering Show. We're going to do an abbreviated intro. Ready? Oh, I forgot this. Dang it. Hold on. That was not abbreviated enough. Hold on. There we go. Sorry. Hello, I'm Chris Curran. This is the Podcast Engineering Show. All right, let's get into it. David Hooper's here. I hope that quick intro appealed to all the people who, whatever. Anyway, David Hooper, my goodness, if you're listening to this podcast, you should actually listen to Build a Big Podcast. That's David's show, and you can go to bigpodcast.com and learn all about what he's doing. David Hooper he's been my friend for more than 3 years now. He actually was a guest on this show on April 7th, 2016. He's a media marketing expert based in Nashville, and he specializes in helping podcasters and everyone get their message out via podcasting and building audiences. Hello, that's a little bit important. That's like one of those details that's like, maybe we should think about that or focus on that. David Hooper, welcome, my friend.
I'm glad to be back here. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, so this is a very special episode. We're doing the David Hooper microphone tests. We got... I talk all the time about how people should, try different microphones to see which microphone works best for their voice. And because you could just hear someone online say, oh, buy a Blue Yeti, which is some of the worst advice ever, usually.
That's fighting words right there.
And
there's a million guys who come in, they say, no, don't do it.
Exactly. Or someone like, oh, someone I know uses a Heil PR40, so those are the best. That's what I'm going to get. No, each voice is different. Each mic is different. And what you want to do is find a good marriage between them. It's like a real marriage. I mean, it's almost like the person's voice and the microphone make love. No?
And the first mic that you choose is usually not the one you're going to stick with.
Oh, geez. You can upgrade your microphone easier than you can upgrade your spouse, though, I guess. Jeez. All right. Well, listen, we got 8 clips. Okay, 3 little FYIs real quick. So 1, at the very end, I'm going to play all 8 clips. So I'll announce each one, but I'm going to play all 8 clips in a row without me blabbing in between too much. So if you want to just listen to all 8 and really get a feel for each one and compare them yourself, feel free to go to the very end of the episode. Number 2, you can download each of these clips, the WAV file, 24-bit, 48 kilohertz, from the show notes. So go to podcastengineeringschool.com and to this episode, and you'll be able to download each of the 8 clips, and you'll be able to open them up on your machine and look at them and listen and all that fun stuff. And the third thing is, you may, before you hear us comment and give our opinions on each of the 8 clips, you may want to, again, either go to the end of the episode and listen to them and make notes yourself. Like, what do you hear on each clip? What do you like and dislike? Or, again, go to the website, download all of them, and listen to them, evaluate them yourself before you listen to us talk about it. And then you'll be able to compare your notes with what we're saying. Anyway, if you want to do that, that's fine. Or feel free to just continue listening. David Hooper, you somehow, and you didn't tell me how, which is part of this whole thing. You recorded 8 clips of yourself talking into 8 different mics. You sent me the audio, and I went through them with my engineering ears and my spectral displays and everything. And I made notes on what I liked and didn't like, or what I heard on each clip. So the whole idea is that we're going to talk about these clips. We're going to play these clips for the listeners too. And then we're going to reveal what each mic was. So like mic number 1, what mic is it? Mic number 2, which mic is it? And then at the very end, I guess I'll give my opinion of like maybe what mic is best for your voice. And you're going to do the same thing, by the way. As we talk about each mic, you're going to talk about how you experience the sound of that mic and if you like it and all that, right?
Right. And I got these mics and recorded them in random order, the order you're playing them in. I'm not sure what it is. These mics vary from $30 to $500. They are broadcast mics. They're all dynamic mics. And the way I got them was I have a broadcast radio show, and there are a lot of mics laying around. And I asked engineer Stephanie, I said, can you record me on some of these? And I've got mics laying around. And recorded the same thing. Got me a little script. And more or less, I think I messed up on one of them, but more or less the same script each time. I tried to keep it as even as possible for this test.
So you already gave something away. Are they really all dynamic microphones?
They are.
Okay.
They are, because I had a, what's the other kind of mic? See, I don't even
condenser?
know, because I never,
Yeah.
I never used condenser mics, and I wanted to keep it dynamic, because in radio broadcasting, that is what you use. You use a dynamic mic.
Got it. Because here's the thing. On actually clip number 1 that I had in my notes, is this a condenser? Question mark. So.
Oh, the mystery.
Yeah. All right.
I'm curious why you think that.
Yeah. All right. Well, so this is going to be so much fun. I hope for you listening that the pace is good and we don't keep you hanging too long, but just stick with us. David and I are just having fun, and we thought you might like to, sit in on this session. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each mic. Well, first of all, let's talk about a couple things first. So when you tried all these different mics, were you careful to make sure your microphone technique was similar for all of them? Or you didn't think about it at all?
You careful. I probably wasn't as careful as you would be. I'm about 3 fingers away. I usually approach the mic from an angle. The mic I'm speaking into now, it's sort of maybe it's like a 2 o'clock angle from my voice, so I'm not directly into it, and it's, again, 3 fingers away. So more or less it was like that, but some of these mics, I'm used to using them differently because of the type of mics that they are, but they were, let's say it was similar, but probably not scientific.
Got it. And okay, that's good. And so that's good enough, actually. So, and now the whole reason for you wanting to do this is, I know you're recording an audiobook right now, so you already have a mic chosen for that and a whole setup, but just real quick, what got you interested in hearing different mics on your voice, and why?
Well, as you mentioned, I am in the middle of recording an audiobook, and you and I saw each other in Orlando, Florida at Podcast Movement, and just having lunch with you, and you're going deep, much deeper than I would into microphones. And I'm getting ready to do this audiobook, which is probably, 12 or 15 hours of finished audio. It's a big project.
Wow.
And I got a little nervous, Chris. I was like, I hope I'm using the right mic. And I hope that the way I'm plugging it in is right. There's a rabbit trail you can go down, right? And It got me thinking about it. I thought, why not make this official? I can get the Chris Curran seal of approval where you bestow onto me the very correct mic that I should use. Unfortunately, I'm already about 75% through the audiobook right now, so I hope that I'm using the right one.
Right? Okay. So this is good. So, and I just realized it's not clip number 1 I thought could be a condenser. It was clip number 8. But anyway, we'll get into all this. So shall we, any other preamble, or should we get into the first clip?
The only other preamble is that everything was directly into the machine via an interface, dry, no effects, no compression. You said you've leveled it, and I don't think there's been anything else done to the sound, right?
Yeah, nothing else done. I literally leveled it to the same LUFS level. That's it. So I didn't touch EQ. In several of the clips, there's a few significant plosives. I didn't touch anything. I didn't do anything. So. All right. Well, let's get to clip number 1. Shall we play it? I mean,
I'm excited.
The suspense.
I can't wait.
All right.
Yes.
Here we go. Clip number 1.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
That was for you, buddy.
I love that. And yes, he did say the same thing for all 8 mics. I love it. All right, so that's clip number 1. And hold on a second. Clip number 1. Well, okay, my thoughts on clip number 1. So let me just say that when I judged and rated all these 8 clips, I basically put them into, I ordered them in tiers of how much I like them. So the first tier for me like sounds the best. The second tier, my second tier choices were really good, but not quite as good as the first tier. Third tier was like okay, and fourth tier was like I don't like that. So this clip number 1 made it into my second tier. And what I heard from this clip was it had a little more mid-range than average than the other mics, and it also had very good clarity. And I actually, I had it's not a guess of what mic I think it is, but like just from the tone of it, I was thinking it was a certain mic. Should I mention that mic now, or should wait? Right?
Well, I'm in suspense right now myself. Yeah, listening back to it, it's weird because I recorded it, and obviously when you speak, you've got bone conduction, and you hear your voice in a different way than you would hear it on the playback. But I noticed the same thing, and I'm actually quite surprised. But I'm also comparing it to my voice speaking to you right now. I was like, wow, it sounds a little bit thin. And I guess you were talking about mid-range. It doesn't have that bass, but I'm not sure if that's just how I'm not used to hearing my voice.
Yeah, no, your observation that it doesn't have a lot of bass, that's a very good observation. That's sort of what I felt as well. But in general, it made my second tier out of four tiers. So I kind of liked this clip number 1. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we're going to play all 8 clips. Like at the end of this episode, toward the end of the episode, we will play all 8 clips in a row without me yapping in between. So you'll be able to listen to them all in a row after we discuss them and you hear them separately. So anything else on clip number 1, David? What'd you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think about radio, and I know NPR has a certain sound. Different radio stations have a certain sound. Some of them do have that bassy, like the rip the knob off, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I hear this, I do think more of that clear NPR sound. It's not that like FM radio kind of thing. So I would think this would probably be a pretty good mic for some people if you like the sound of it. I don't know how much of this is just personal preference. Like, do you like the sound of your voice in this mic? Because I think from a marketing perspective, you're putting your voice out there. You need to be comfortable with how it sounds. So if you like that maybe NPR kind of thinner sound, well, this might be a good mic for you based on what you said, Chris.
Yeah, and I do agree with you that it really is. It depends on the voice and the mic. So even if, like, let's say you want that really bassy and beefy radio voice, but you hear a mic. Let's say you hear this mic, clip number 1, and you're like, yeah, that just sounds clear, and it sounds like me. It just sounds like a good version of me in my voice. You might pick that one because it's just a better representation rather than, I just want a lot of low end kind of thing. Definitely. You're right on that.
Well, but with that said, I'm sitting here looking at my compressor. I've got a DBX 286S, and I've got enhancers, and I guess what they call enhancer is the EQ on this setup.
Right.
I'm curious, from your engineering ears, starting with this kind of clarity, it's probably a pretty good thing, I would imagine, because then you can EQ it later to maybe tweak it. If you wanted more of that bass, you could get that based on your post-production. Am I right about that?
You're right to a certain extent, but so that brings up that goes back to the point I just talked about, was that some mics will just sound like a better representation of you, so that if it is lacking a little bass, then yes, you can add a little bit of bass later, and it'll make it just a little beefier, but it'll still be a great representation of you. It reminds me of in the studios when we were recording music and instruments and drums. Like, for instance, when you record a drum set, you put up all the mics and you listen to it. You listen to what the mics sound like. But before you reach for an EQ or a compressor, all that nonsense, you first listen to, like, okay, what does this sound like? Like, is this the best mic for the snare drum? And if the snare drum just like, it doesn't sound right, the answer is not EQ. The answer is a different mic. And so we would literally swap mics in and out off the drums, or if you're recording guitar. And so getting the mic right to where it's close to being really good, then later EQ, you can shape it a little. That's totally fine. But you don't want to rely on EQ to polish a turd, basically, right?
Can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, and that's really why we're doing this test. This is the rawest way to hear your voice, just straight into the machine.
Yeah.
With no EQ, no compression, none of the fancy tricks that we normally use for podcasting.
Exactly. So the purpose of this exercise is to just, for me anyway, as an engineer, is just to get a sense of what mic represents your voice the best. Even if it is deficient, if it has a couple deficiencies, that's fine. But starting with the best version, the best signal, and then you can tweak it after that. Okay, so let's get to clip number 2. Are you ready to move on to clip number 2?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
Clip number 2, I also had in the second tier. So this one I also liked quite a bit. And, let me play it.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Yeah, so very different. What did you go first? What did you think about number 2?
For my just layman's ears, it sounds a little bit more muddy, a little bassy because of that maybe.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference that I can tell.
Yeah, me too. It definitely has a lot of low end, but it has good tone. I did like the tone of it. And tone just means that general feeling and general sound that you get from a mic. So I thought it had good tone, and I also this is another one where I sort of had a guess at what mic it is. And I have a feeling of a lot of the listeners too. They're like, "Oh, that's probably blank." Anyway,
that's how you know you've got a classic mic.
Let me tell you this: having a lot of low end isn't necessarily a bad thing because you can roll it off. Again, it comes down to the tone, the general tone of the mic. Does it make your voice sound good? And I think in general, this one's pretty good on you. Yeah. So I liked number 2 as well. All right, shall we move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Number 3, let's play it.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
All right, well, I thought this one, it also had pretty good tone, and it had decent clarity, but it did have a lot of low end, and so it had more low end and the clarity was okay, but maybe not enough. And so this mic actually made it into my 3rd tier. So this one, I didn't love it, but I guess it was okay. What are your thoughts?
Just thinking about the first 2, to me, this is kind of in the middle for exactly the reasons that you said. It's a little bit bassier, some clarity, but not muddy, maybe. And I don't know, third tier. Why 3rd tier for that? I mean, is that it's just kind of in the middle? It gets lost in the middle, maybe.
I don't know. So I have this sense, like when I'm listening to someone's voice that was recorded through a microphone, I get a sense of and I don't know why or how. I guess it's the richness of the sound. Like some mics just sound rich and professional, and other mics sound like a little flimsy and weak, and just they just don't sound like high fidelity. I don't know. They're kind of a stupid way to say it. I mean, that's an obvious thing to say, but I don't know. So this number 3, it's it doesn't sound like a top tier microphone to me with your voice. So just something about it didn't impress me. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, that's why I'm here, Chris. You got those professional ears, man.
Yeah. And again, this is just my opinion, by the way. I encourage everyone, as I mentioned at the top, we're going to play all 8 clips in a row at the end. And please, if you're listening to this, go to the post or go to, David's website or my website, wherever you're hearing this, and tell us what mic you like the best or worst, right? Or whatever. It'd be good. All right, let's move on to number 4. Oh boy. Well, I'll just play it first.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
All right, that was mic number 4, and I thought it was lacking clarity, and I have in my notes here, but it's not terrible. But this was in my 4th tier, so this is at the bottom of the list, toward the bottom of the list for me. Not that it's terrible, but it didn't grab me. What are your thoughts?
Probably not that extreme. I was like, well, okay. I'm starting to kind of lose track on the differences here. And it didn't have that rich, bassy tone that some of these other mics might have had, or the clarity, but it wasn't bad. I don't know. I think if I didn't compare that to something else. So, for example, if I were on that mic and not interviewing somebody who was on maybe a more professional, maybe a first tier mic, I don't know that I would necessarily notice that much.
Right. Yeah. And I will say also that like all these 8 clips none of them are horrible. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but.
Number 5, you're setting it up.
Actually, the next two. All right, let's play number 5. Let's play number 5. Here we go.
Okay.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Okay, for number 5, I had 3 adjectives. And actually, I'll just say it. 5 and 6, I have the same 3 adjectives. Both clips, 5 and 6. Mid-rangey, small, and blah. And these are in my 4th tier, obviously. These are at the bottom of the list. And mid-rangey, mid-rangey is not necessarily terrible, but small sounding is noteworthy because, for instance, what was it? Oh, yeah, it's clip number 2 that had a lot of low end. See, low end kind of, if you add more low end, you're adding size, basically. So if you want something to sound bigger, like you add some low end, and if you want it to sound smaller and wimpy, you remove the low end. That's a general rule of thumb with EQing, basically. Or I should say how voices are perceived. So to me, number 5 sounded a little small, and blah, again, it's just the tone of it. It just didn't get me. What'd you think?
Well, it's interesting. You talked about mid-range, and I think that was your comment from the very first mic that we heard, which was in your 2nd tier.
Right.
And I agree with you. This did sound small, but also a mid-range mic. So I think it shows you that you can still have maybe like a bigger sound with a mid-range mic that is available to you. Obviously, not through this mic.
Right. Okay, so let's play number 6. Again, I have the same feedback about number 6. So here's number 6.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Yeah. So again, I had mid-rangey, small, and blah. And by the way, I will say it's a little. I'm having a strange experience right now as we're recording this because when I really listened carefully to all these clips, I was using my studio monitors and I was really listening critically, and I could turn up the volume and really I was listening very critically. Right now, as we're recording this episode, I'm wearing my headphones, and I actually have my headphone volume relatively low because I like to keep my headphone volume relatively low to avoid feedback. So right now, I'm not actually hearing, I'm not hearing the clips well enough to confirm my previous opinions. So it's a little weird for me right now. It's like I'm hearing it, and to me at a low volume, number 6 actually didn't sound that bad, but before when I really was critical, it again, mid-rangey, small, and blah. What'd you think?
Well, I'm actually listening through iPhone earbuds, so everything is mid-rangey, small, and blah.
Okay.
It almost sounds like the same mic.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because the notes that I wrote down with your 3 adjectives, mid-range, small, blah. It's like, well, is that the same mic? So,
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with what you're saying.
All right. Well, there we go. Well, I'll tell you what. So we're going to move on to clip number 7. Here's clip number 7. Oh, I got to make sure I click the right clip. Here we go.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
All right. Well, this mic, so mic number 7, I actually had it in my 3rd tier, which is fairly low. I think it has good clarity, but it's lacking body. Like it's, again, not enough low end or not enough low mids. It's maybe sounds a little bit small, but I also have it in 3rd tier because, again, it just doesn't sound like a rich microphone. I don't know how else to explain it. What'd you think? Anything?
100%. And I'm actually surprised that I can hear these things, but I was thinking the same thing. Nice clarity, but has that. I would even maybe say that was small, although not as thin as maybe the previous couple of mics.
Right. Yeah, and the body, like the low mids and the low frequencies, like they're so important for the feel of the voice, of the tone, because it adds it just, I don't know, like low mids themselves, actually low mid frequencies, probably from, I don't know, let's say 200 hertz up to 500 hertz, something like that. That carries the most energy, actually, in terms of energy. So the low mids are always critical in audio engineering. Like whether I was producing music or podcasts, anything, whenever I hear audio playback and I'm listening critically, I just by instinct, I automatically always first sort of notice the low mids. And is there too much low mids? Does it sound muddy and like a little muffled? Or are there not enough low mids where it sounds small and wimpy? And the low mids are weird because like around 200 hertz or 250 hertz, that's fairly low frequency. But you get up to 500, and that's a weird range. 400, 500, 600 hertz. That's a weird range. It's hard to explain. Usually you don't have to worry about it. But anyway, my point is that the low mids, they play a really big part in how the sound is perceived.
Well, I think beyond just the way, like the physical way the sound is perceived, I also think there are different elements of how we as humans connect with people with lower voices or higher voices. So that also may be something to consider when choosing a mic. It's funny, there's a kid in the neighborhood, and he just got a dog, and he was telling me, I saw him out on the street. He said, I think my dog has two different barks, depending on if he's trying to talk to another dog or if he's just hanging out and barking. He's got this like deeper, like don't mess with me bark. And I wonder if humans may be the same way. Like we talk more authoritatively. That's why they talk about many women having vocal fry issues, because they're trying to lower their voices. So anyway, another thing to add to the mix and confuse you as far as choosing mics and different frequencies of your voice and what to accentuate.
Yeah, very good point that you just made. And also like proximity to the mic. So normally, actually this episode is the first episode ever of this podcast where I'm using my normal setup, but I'm actually a little bit further away from the mic, and the mic is angled a little bit more. So I like to get right up on the mic to get more proximity effect, which the proximity effect actually adds some low end fullness. Mm-hmm. And I usually love that.
I always hear proximity effect. Well, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's you want to reduce proximity effect." It's like, no, proximity effect is great.
Well, it can be, but I'm sure there's a microphone out there that when you get right up on it, maybe it's too much low end, too muddy, where it's better to be 3 or 6 inches away. I don't know. So it depends on the sound, whether the proximity effect is good or bad, or works for you or works against you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just think from like a FM radio thing, I there's still something about me that loves that deep FM, like I said, the rip the knob off voice. And if we can we call out a mic right now? I think that's why a lot of people really love the Heil PR40, because it seems to have that bass element that a lot of other mics, even some of the ones that we're hearing, they don't have.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard a million PR40s in my life, but and I'm not just saying this to be contrarian or anything, but I really have never been that impressed with the PR40. And I haven't heard a really lot of low end in there. I mean, there's a good amount, but I was never like, I never heard a PR40 and was like, wow, that's awesome low end smoothness and all that. I didn't ever hit me that way. But again, it's dependent on the voice. So,
well, it could be the EQ too. I think a lot of beginning podcasters, because of maybe bone conduction, we're used to hearing our voice a certain way, so they're going to throw on that FM radio EQ and think, oh, this is how I sound. And those guys a lot of times are using PR40. So, it's a chicken and the egg thing, perhaps.
Yep, you're right. All right, well, on to clip number 8, and this made my first tier. This is the only mic in my first tier, so you could say that this was my choice. So, for now, in terms of
you
sound,
find out what they are.
I like this one the best. I don't know if I should have said that before I played it, but all right, here's clip number 8.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Yeah, so this is the one where I had a note next to it saying, "Is this a condenser?" ? Because it sounds very clear, and you sound it just sounds like you're there in the room with me a little more than the other mics. It's very clear, but it has a nice frequency wise, the frequency balance is nice. Like I don't think it has too much low or too little low frequencies, and same with the mids and highs. Like to me, this one was the closest to spot on. Now, I would in post-production, I still would tweak it a little, and I don't know, again, you sound very close and clear. I don't know if maybe you were physically closer to this mic. I don't know, but anyway, those are my thoughts. What do you think about clip 8?
I'm not sure that it's just the distance we've had since clip 7, but I was like, yeah, that does sound good.
Right? Yeah.
So I agree. Yeah, I agree, and it's funny. I just flipped my list over because I'm like, wait a minute, was that a condenser? And I will tell you this, Chris.
Don't. If it's a Blue Yeti, we're stopping right now. I'm kidding. I'm happy to give the Blue Yeti the props it deserves when it deserves it.
Chris,
and the Blue Yeti, by the way, I've always said it's a very good mic if you use it properly. So anyway, sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, one of these mics, I made a mistake. I said that these were all dynamic mics, but in this mix, there is one condenser mic.
So, okay. So here's the thing. We're ready for the reveal, and we might as well start here because, again, clip number 8 was my favorite, and now you're telling me it's a condenser.
No. I'm telling you, one of them was a condenser. One of them.
Oh, okay. So should we start with should we go backwards with the reveals?
Yeah, we can. Do you want to go? Do you want to start at 8 and then work our way down?
Yeah, let's do that. So again, clip 8 is the one I picked
tier
for top spot. What mic was it?
Well, I'll tell you what. Or if you want to, do you want to start? We could start with the tiers, like the ones that you liked the best, and then go second tier, third tier, fourth.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. So again, my first tier was clip number 8, and
all right, clip number 8 is the ATR 2100 USB.
Really? Okay.
That's what I said when I flipped it over. I was like, I hope we didn't get our numbers mixed up and that's the reason we're doing this double blind thing, because you could be biased to a $60 mic going straight into a computer.
Yeah.
But it sounds great.
So you did record this ATR USB directly into the computer?
Directly into the computer using Audacity.
Okay. So you didn't take the XLR out of the mic and go into your interface and all that?
Nope.
Got it. Is this the only USB mic that you tested?
It is not.
Okay, so there you go. So I picked the ATR 2100. Wow, and I was just thinking, like, one of my clients uses an ATR 2100, and she's been using it so long, and like, I mean, it sounds good, it sounds fine, but like, I kind of, engineers like me, like, we always want to upgrade. So I'm like thinking maybe she should get a better mic, but dude, wow.
Yeah. Well, it's a solid mic. It's a great road mic. I use it all the time, and it's a great utility mic because you can start with USB, and then if you want to go into a mixer, you've also got that option. So I've been using AT stuff forever, 20, 30 years, and I've always had good experiences with them. And ATR 2100 is a great mic.
So interesting. Wow. All right. Well, wow. All right. That was my first tier. So my second tier was clips number 1 and 2. So why don't we start with clip number 1, which I said had more mid-range but very good clarity. And I actually, so clip number 1, I had written next to it SM7B with a question mark.
Chris, clip number 1 is the Blue Yeti.
Is it?
Yes.
All right. Well, there you go.
And let me tell you how I set it up. I put it on cardioid because you know Blue Yeti has about 5 different mics in it, and you asked about mic technique. The gain all the way down, and I was 3 fingers away, just like I am with all of these mics.
Got it. So you were real close to the Blue Yeti. Yeah. So
Very
and obviously
close, gain all the way down.
Yeah. So obviously that makes a big difference because typically the Blue Yeti is used. People put it on a desk like 2.5 feet away from their mouth, and it's like across the desk.
Well, you know what's funny? I thought about doing a ninth microphone, and I was going to crank the gain all the way up and set it on the other side of the room, but
that
for whatever reason, I didn't do that.
Oh my God, the Blue Yeti. All right. So that's clip number 1, which made my second tier. Okay. So now clip number 2 was also in my second tier. I said it had good tone, lots of low end, and this one I had RE20 question mark next to it.
You are correct. Okay. Yes, the RE20 by Electro Voice.
Okay, yeah, because the low end and the clarity. So that sounded good on your voice for sure. So all right, RE20 is number 2.
Well, that's the normal mic that I use on the broadcast show is the RE20, and if you walk into a radio station, you know this, you see two mics. You see Shure SM7B or an RE20, and there's a reason for that. It's a great mic.
Right. Okay, let's move to the third tier, which is, probably about average average sounding to me. That's what I thought. So in the third tier, I had clip number 3 and clip number 7. So for clip number 3, I thought it had good tone, decent clarity, but it had a lot of low end. And actually this one, I also had SM7B question mark.
Yeah, for number 3, you were close. It starts with SM, but it ends with 58.
Oh, okay. Which, for some reason, I thought that the SM58 and the SM7B use the same diaphragm, but I don't think they do. But they might. Now I confused myself, all right? But anyway, they're both Shure mics. They're both classics. So yeah, all right, SM58. All right, good tone, decent clarity. Yeah, a lot of low end. Which, by the way, that's why they make good live mics, like for singers live on stage, because there's not a ton of high end in the mid range. Well, the mids and the high mids and the high frequencies they're more prone to feedback in live situations.
Right.
So the the SM58 is a little bit darker of a mic, which actually helps in live situations. That's one of the reasons why it's good there. But yeah, sounded good.
Well, speaking of live situations, when we do a live broadcast and we can be in the middle of, I've done them in the middle of, Bonnaroo, Austin City Limits Fest, in the middle of like NAMM, if you've ever been to a NAMM show, National Association of Music Merchants, where you've got drummers drumming, guitars guitaring, and that mic will cancel a lot out, and it's really great for a live noisy situation. And as you mentioned, the EQ and everything on it is good as well.
Okay, nice. So, okay, number 7 was also in my third tier. Number 7 I thought had good clarity but lacking body. So what was it?
Well, so this is interesting. Number 7 is the same as number 8. It's the ATR 2100, but I went in with an XLR straight into a Focusrite Scarlett.
Interesting. So this is interesting. I wonder what that says about the mic or your signal chain or something, because if it was that different, that's pretty shocking. But I get not shocking. It's interesting. Let's put it that way. So, all right. Well, there you go. I'm so glad you put that in the test. That's very interesting, right?
Well, people always ask, like, what's the difference? And I don't know. I said, let's go see Chris Curran.
Right. All right. So now let's do this. I'm gonna hijack the reveal section of this episode, and I'm gonna play number 7, which was the ATR 2100 USB, but you had it plugged in via an XLR cable,
right,
to your Focusrite 2i2, and then I'm gonna play clip number 8, which was the ATR 2100 via USB. All right, so I'm going to play the XLR version, then the USB version, one after the other. Clip 7, then clip 8. Here we go.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
And here's 8.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Yeah, they're very different. And so anyway, that's it. Well, if we were, it'd be fun trying to figure out why it's different, but we don't. Obviously, we're not going to because that'll take a lot of time.
Well, let me throw one more thing that's different about it. When that first clip, the one via XLR, that is going into a PC using Audacity. The second one, as I mentioned, goes into Audacity. It's on a Macintosh though, so I'm not sure if there's a way to look at the difference in how Audacities work between different platforms, but maybe that has something to do with your sound too.
Actually, no. So Audacity is just receiving a digital signal. So when you have the ATR 2100 plugged in USB, the mic itself is creating the digital signal and it's just flowing through the USB cable into Audacity. When you connect the mic XLR, it goes XLR into your interface, which is the Focusrite 2i2, correct?
Right, correct.
Yeah. And the Focusrite 2i2 is converting it into the digital signal. So then from the 2i2 to the computer, it's just the digital signal going into Audacity. So it's not Audacity, it's the actual the analog to digital converters that are happening either in the mic or in the Focusrite 2i2. And that's once the signal's digital, that it's the same. It doesn't matter what cable it flows through or what program captures it. It's just the digital signal. That's it. Interesting. Wow. All right. Well, let's move to the 4th tier then. These are the ones I didn't really like. First one in the 4th tier is clip number 4, which I thought was lacking clarity, but not terrible. So what was clip number 4?
Clip number 4, another Shure microphone, the SM7B.
Wow. Okay. Lacking clarity, but not terrible. Yeah, that makes sense. That's typical SM7B on the flat settings, because the SM7B has little EQ settings on the back of the mic. You can actually.
Well, it's funny. I talked to the head engineer at the radio station where I do the broadcast show. They had just switched over to SM7B, which I thought was interesting because it was an RE20 studio. And like I said, there are usually 2 mics you see in the radio station. And then they switched back. And I said, what's the deal? What's the deal? And his comment on SM7B was like, if you want to hear how you really sound, SM7B is a great mic. But the issue was that, that radio station had a signature sound, and it wasn't how people really sounded, apparently. It was the RE20 type sound, maybe some of the things that we talked about. Yeah, so they switched it over. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with that microphone. I know that their big claim to fame, or one of them is Thriller by Michael Jackson, was recorded on that. He sounded pretty good. So I know there's a lot that you can do with it. It's interesting that it ended up on the tier situation like it did.
Yeah, probably just the lack of clarity. That's the thing. Like if it's, again, compared to the other ones in clarity, it's not as clear. And that's just the nature of the mic. And some people like that. Like Bandrew Scott from Podcastage, he thinks I sound better on an SM7B than I do on the RE20 that I'm speaking into right now. I don't agree with him,
right?
But he likes that sort of softer, slightly darker sound, a little less, I want to say less harsh, but it's not that my voice right now sounds harsh. It just sounds clear. But he likes the little smoother, not as clear, I guess. Or darker, I guess. All right, let's move to clip number 5. Clip number 5, well, clips 5 and 6, I thought were both mid-rangey, small, and blah. So what was clip number 5?
So clip number 5 is the AT BP40, the mic I'm actually talking on now, and the mic that I'm recording this audiobook on. So I'm committed, Chris.
Well,
I'm sorry to hear this made the 4th tier.
Well, no, but look. So remember I said in the beginning, like all these mics are good mics. Like they're not, none of them is terrible.
Right.
It's just a matter of, and look, it's just my opinion. That's another thing. And again, you have post-production. You can tweak these. You can tweak all these to sound good. I mean, I could mix any
Well,
one. I could mix any of these to sound good. That's not a problem.
The interesting thing about this in particular and why I'm using this mic, and I think this is something worthwhile for any podcaster, is that I bought this based on the brand. It wasn't a popular mic. It was their broadcast version of, it was just like the RE20 or the SM7B, and they had their own version of it. That's the reason I got it, based on the brand, based on reputation. And that's why we're doing this double-blind test, because it's like, how often do we do that? Are we basing something on somebody else's recommendation or advertising or reputation of, that mic was used in Thriller, therefore it's going to be good for me. So it is interesting. This mic, for whatever reason, hasn't really taken off, and it's, you can maybe explain a little bit more of this, but when you look at the frequencies that it picks up, it has kind of a mid-range boost or something that the other mics don't have that are in a similar category.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's totally fine. I mean, it's totally fine. Like the BP40 is the mic that when we did the mic test drive in Anaheim at Podcast Movement a few years ago, Michael Stelzner from the Social Media Examiner, is that where he's from? I think that's what it's called. Michael Stelzner.
Yes.
When he did the mic test drive, he jumped on the BP40 and immediately he sounded like $1 million, and I was like, dude, that's the match for your voice. So it's definitely a good mic, and yeah, you're fine, dude. Again, these are all, we're nitpicking, right? That's what we're doing. So, and I just realized that I encourage everyone to, I'm gonna overdub this at the beginning, but I want to encourage everyone, before they listen to our opinions, maybe they can listen to all the clips and make notes themselves, and then listen to this episode. So I'll put that in the beginning. I guess I should edit that out, but
well, and also A/Bing them, because the thing that I've learned from being in the music industry, like listening to songs, you could have a great song, but I've heard a better song right before yours doesn't sound so great, or if I've heard a worse song before yours sounds even better. Same thing with mics, and you can get ear fatigue, and we're talking. You're talking. I'm kind of adding the layman's terms though, but and Chris has very attuned ears, and he's listening for stuff that I think the average listener probably would be like, I don't hear it.
Right.
But they might know how it makes them feel. They might not know why it sounds good. So that's why we're going into this.
Yes. Very well said. I like that. Okay, the last clip, number 6. What was mic number 6?
Mic number 6 is my favorite Rode mic because it is cheap and durable. The ES58 by GLS Audio, $30 on Amazon. It's an SM58 knockoff. Obviously, compared to the SM58, though, in this test, it didn't do as well.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, and that's also why I brought up at the very beginning, like the proximity and the, all that, because it does make a difference. Like, for instance, your BP40 that you're recording the audiobook with, I don't know if it would make sense to try to get right up on that thing. I don't know. So, but anyway, obviously you're in the middle of recording. Don't change anything now.
Don't change horses midstream. That's my next audio clip.
yeah, exactly.
Well, something that I didn't think about, Chris, if I can add one more thing, this BP40, it does have a foam windscreen on it. I think the SM7B obviously has one of those built in. I believe the RE20 did as well. So I don't know how much that affects tone or that kind of thing, but that would be something to experiment if you've got one of these mics, because from my understanding, that does affect the frequencies that come through, and that'll affect how things sound.
It does a little, but like, for instance, the RE20, inside the mic, there's some foam to help stop the plosives, and we really can't take it out.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the SM7B, like it has the big piece of foam, which you don't have to use, but even the smaller cap on that mic is it's thin foam, but it does help a little bit.
Right.
So some of these mics, you don't have a choice. It's just, that's what it is. And
the foam will deteriorate as well. A lot of times those old mics, the foam is not of the quality of the new mics. So I've found older mics don't sound as good as some of the newer ones, or vice versa, for whatever reason.
Right.
I asked, there's a rumor going around about the RE20 that the older ones sound better than the new ones. And I asked the guy from Electro Voice, he goes, oh yeah, the difference is that you've been spitting into the mic for so many years and it's got all this funk in it. And I guess, funk sounds good. So
yeah, I don't know if that's the only reason. I mean, they did, I believe they switched some components when there was a definite point in time, and I believe it was either the late 80s or early 90s, something around there, and this is what I've been told. I don't know 1,000% for sure, but I believe they switched the way they make them. They started to use a different element, some of the plastic in the diaphragm or something around the diaphragm. They started to use different parts or something, and it did have a slight, it did have an effect on the sound slightly, but it did. I have both. The RE20 I'm speaking into now is one from the 80s, the old version, I guess. And I do have a new one, and I A/B'd them back and forth, and there is a slight difference. It's just a little clarity in the mid-range. There's a little more clarity in the one I'm using now, which is a vintage one, than the newer ones. But again, we're splitting hairs. Just everyone remember that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's another interesting discussion. Like the $30 mic, are you sounding that much better on a $500 mic to make it worth the investment for you to do another $470? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I mean, look, so again, we're splitting hairs because that's what we do on this show. We dive deep, but for the average person, it's like, hey, you just get a decent mic and you'll be fine. And that's it. So those are the two ends of the spectrum, right? So, all right, well, look, what did we learn? Well, we learned that out of all these, I picked the ATR 2100 USB via USB. And I also did like the Blue Yeti. And I also did like the RE20. And then from there, I liked them. Okay. Below that, they were okay. They were good. But anyway, again, I'm splitting hairs. So overall, what are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I think this is a podcast about hope. I think it's a podcast about hope, because the next time you get in a fight with somebody over your Blue Yeti, they can just play the clip of Chris Curran with a double-blind test, loving the Blue Yeti.
Yeah,
or at least liking it more than you thought you might.
I'm completely comfortable with my opinions on the Blue Yeti, and I've stated them clearly many times. So I don't have to hide from anybody. I don't have to worry about what I say. I'm very open and honest about the Blue Yeti, and I always have been. It's a good mic, but most people use it wrong, and then it's terrible. That's all.
Yeah.
And
3 fingers gain all the way down. That's the secret, it seems.
I still, yeah. I mean, the other thing is, it's sort of, I don't know. I don't want to say that. Hold on. All right. Well, let's David Hooper. So what are your final thoughts on this microphone test that we've done for you?
Well, I really appreciate the time it took for you to go through this. I think it's an exciting thing to talk about, because it's something that comes up so often that even as somebody with the experience that I have, you start to question it. You're like, maybe I've got the wrong mic. And we look for those easy cures. It's easier to buy something than it is to actually work on our technique, or to get in and EQ something or edit it like it needs to be edited. We think that one piece of equipment is going to make all the difference. And there are a lot of things that go into making a great podcast. So I think that this, if nothing else, I think that this podcast shows that there are a lot of things that go into making a great podcast, and microphone is just one of those things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And in the biggest picture, like, it's not that big of a deal. As long as you're using a decent mic, it'll be fine. It's all about the message and all that. But of course, on this show, again, we go deep and we nitpick and we have fun. All right. Well, so you're going to finish up the audiobook, and then you're going to come back, because I want to talk to you all about the audiobook. And I mean, dude, it's been 3.5 years since you've been on my show, and just your normal podcasting gear has changed a little bit. So I want to talk about all that. So
it has. Yep. I'm using this BP40 now.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Well, there you go. See,
yeah, I can't wait to do it. You've excited me about gear, and just, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I was coming from a music business background. I got a degree in commercial music, grew up in the studio. My first session was when I was 5 years old and still didn't know a lot of the stuff that I've learned from you. So I thank you for that and spreading the word and getting me excited about taking my podcast to a different level, not in the words that I'm saying, but how those words are recorded.
Right. By the way, I forgot to ask you, did you use your DBX 286S on any of these clips?
Nope. Everything was straight in.
Straight in. Got it. Straight into the Focusrite 2i2. Cool.
Yep. Straight into the Focusrite, or else we have a Pro Tools rig for some of those mics. So they were, maybe that's a little bit different, but there were no effects or nothing, no kind of signal chain, as you call it.
Got it. Yeah. That's interesting because so that's interesting. The Pro Tools rig you went into for some of the mics might have had better converters than the Focusrite 2i2. Although the Focusrite 2i2 it's high enough quality that you don't have to worry about it. But again, compared to high-end converters, that might actually make a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, it adds to the mystery, doesn't it? It's I thought about that too, because it's definitely it's a pro machine. It runs everything at WRLT and going straight into it. It's like maybe we should go into the Focusrite, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so many little things, and I think that's maybe another lesson to walk away from this is like there's a million things, and who knows? This wasn't scientific. We'll just leave it at that.
Right. Yeah, and it's all good. So I just want everyone to realize too that your book has been out for a little while now. It's called Big Podcast. So everyone, if you haven't, and this is a big book. This is a big podcast. It's a big book. Anyway, I'll put the link to your book in the show notes. So check it out if you haven't checked it out. And of course, bigpodcast.com is your website. And seriously, anyone, if you're listening to this and you or anyone you know wants to know how to market your podcast or your clients' podcasts to grow an audience and all that, David Hooper is the guy to talk to. So find him, bother him, heckle him, annoy him, get him on the phone. I don't know. Do something to David Hooper because you should talk to him. Anyway, thank you, David Hooper.
Yeah, that's what we do. Thank you. No, it's been so much fun. This is a different aspect of podcasting, so it's fun for me to jump into it and look at it from a different perspective, and it's been great. So now I've got to go out and get an RE20.
Oh, jeez. All right, and so we're gonna do remember we did the abbreviated intro for the show. We're gonna do an abbreviated outro. So David Hooper, you have to say or yell "sound great," but you need to say it really fast.
Yep.
Like say it as fast as humanly possible.
Perfect.
And so I'm gonna actually play a little bit of the music and then cut it off real quick. And as soon as I cut off the music,
okay, you'll count me down.
Well, as soon as you stop hearing the music, yell "sound great" really quickly, and then we're done.
Perfect.
Sound great.
Sound great.
Oh, geez. Oh, God. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you. Clip 1.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Clip 2.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Clip 3.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Clip 4.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Clip 5.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Clip 6.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
Clip 7.
Hey, it's David Hooper from BigPodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.
clip 8.
Hey, it's David Hooper from bigpodcast.com. To make this microphone sound its best, you're going to need a couple of horses, a couple of mules, and Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School.